While tattoos are commonplace in this day and age, they have a really strange history, full of violent stories, famous figures, and freaky characters. Whether you have tattoos or are just interested in them, here's the bizarre history behind the art. Just when the practice of tattooing began is unclear, because we keep finding older and older mummies with evidence of ink. Ötzi, the European Tyrolean Iceman who died around 3250 BC, holds the current record for oldest body art, with a whopping 61 tattoos all over his body. For a while, there was an argument that a South American mummy with a pencil mustache tattoo was older, but then the experts changed their minds. While Ötzi has a lot of tats, they're mostly lines and seem to have been intended to be medicinal. They cover parts of his body where he had joint and spinal problems. Two 5,000-year-old Egyptian mummies just a shade younger than Ötzi have the first known figurative tattoos. We know the ancient Greeks had tattoos, as did the ancient Chinese. And importantly, we know ink was for both men and women. A Siberian princess who died 2,500 years ago has very cool tattoos that are startlingly similar to modern ones. It's commonly known that Jewish people aren't supposed to get tattoos, but the reason is less than cut and dried. One of the many laws in Leviticus says, quote, "You shall not make gashes in your flesh for the dead, or incise any marks on yourselves." That's a translation from the Hebrew, obviously, but you'll notice that its meaning is open to interpretation. Harvard Divinity School explains that there probably wasn't any real issue with tattooing, and Jews might have been doing it before the ban. However, by making them a no-no, Israelites were distinguishing themselves as different from people like the Babylonians and Egyptians who did tattoo themselves. Inkless skin was another way the early Jews became their own group. Then the Nazis added a whole other horrible level to Jewish tattooing. In concentration camps, the Nazis forcibly inked identification numbers on their prisoners, which was a violation of their bodily autonomy and their religion. So now, Jews getting tattoos is extra controversial. That doesn't mean they don't do it, though. Many young Jews get tattoos, including ones directly related to their religion. There aren't any real consequences to getting tattoos if you're Jewish, as the idea you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have body art is false. Even though Leviticus is included in the Christian Bible, the verse about not getting tattoos was pretty much ignored, just like similar Jewish laws on eating kosher. According to the Catholic News Agency, that particular branch of Christianity has never had a ban on body art. Some later Christian churches weren't the biggest tattoo fans, but there has never been a Christianity-wide ban. Quite the opposite is true. In fact, in the Roman Empire, before Christianity was legal, early believers would often tattoo themselves with signs of their faith, marking themselves permanently as followers of Christ and, ironically, as criminals. In the Bible, Paul says he, quote, bears the marks of Jesus on his body, and while scholars think he was being metaphorical, it isn't certain. Christians kept up the body art even once their religion was widely accepted. Early historians talk about the practice, and popular design choices seem to have been crosses and marks representing the wounds of Jesus. Tribal ink has been an important part of societies from Polynesia to North America for thousands of years. In Samoa, men would be tattooed from their midriff to their knees. This involved days-long sessions with a mallet and ink-laden comb. The pain was intense, and there was a very real risk of death from infection. But any man who couldn't hack it had an unfinished tat and was shamed for life. Women also got tattoos, although theirs tended to be a bit smaller. Some Native American tribes used a sharpened bone or rock to carve a design into the skin. The open wound was then rubbed with soot or dye, which would leave a stain. Men might get a tattoo to represent a particular victory or for spiritual reasons. Some tribes believed tattoos could give them supernatural powers, and members got an image of an animal they wanted to be like. Of course, then Christians came along and decided that the practice must be stopped. Western missionaries who showed up in Polynesia in the 1800s vilified tattooing, and the art form went into decline. Forced tattooing has been around pretty much as long as voluntary tattooing. In China, tattoos were considered a highly effective means of punishment for most of recorded history, according to the Journal of the American Oriental Society. If you broke the law, ink marked you as a criminal for life and brought shame on you and your family. At some point, soldiers were also forcibly tattooed so they wouldn't be able to desert, but this practice was highly controversial. Slaves have also been forcibly tattooed for millennia. The ancient Persians, Greeks, Romans, Chinese, and Japanese all tattooed slaves to discourage them from running away. This was why Christians in ancient Rome would sometimes tattoo themselves voluntarily, preemptively marking themselves as criminals and the slaves they would become if their religion was found out. The practice of forced tattooing continues, shockingly, to this day. In 1993, Indian police inked Jeb Khatri, Punjabi for pickpocket, on the foreheads of 4 women who were habitual offenders. This caused a huge scandal, and the cops received jail time. And in 2017, CNN reported on trafficked women that were being marked with tattoos meant to identify them as property. In the past, criminals were inked against their will, but these days, the association between lawbreakers and ink is just as strong. People tend to think of the tattooed, especially the heavily tattooed, as bad guys. This is so ingrained that it actually affects the outcome of trials. According to the Orlando Sentinel, even though everyone from celebrities to soccer moms have tattoos these days, there's still a criminal association for some people, and sometimes those people end up on juries. So defense attorneys advise their tattooed clients to cover up body art with clothing or, in extreme cases, even makeup. A judge once ordered the state to pay for a professional cosmetologist to cover the swastika and barbed wire tats of a man on trial for murder. Once you end up in jail, though, tattoos become a virtual rite of passage. The amateur ink that criminals get behind bars is usually filled with meaning, whether it indicates their time inside, the crimes they committed, or the prison gang they belong to. But do tattoos and bad behavior actually have a correlation? A 2010 study out of Texas Tech University was misreported as finding that the more tattoos you had, the more likely you were to be deviant. However, according to the study, since so many people have tattoos these days, the correlation with deviant behavior is extremely low.
High school.
Oh, no!
We all have our embarrassing moments.
In the 1800s, tattoos were modernized a bit and became more common. Even society women got tattoos. That meant if you wanted to stand out, you had to get lots of ink. Since this was also the heyday of the circus and its sideshows, this meant the introduction of the heavily tattooed freak. While some sideshows had tattooed men, it was the tattooed lady that really made headlines. According to Vice, the first official tattooed lady was Nora Hildebrandt, who worked briefly for Barnum and Bailey before she was replaced. Tattoos and female sexuality were heavily intertwined in the public mind. Time says that tattooed ladies often performed stripteases to show off all their ink. In the beginning of the phenomenon, the women all had stories about how they'd been kidnapped and tattooed against their wills. But this lie fell out of fashion. Spectators could buy photos of tattooed ladies to take home as souvenirs. While there was definitely an exploitative side, working as a sideshow attraction was one of the few ways women at the time could earn their own money and have some kind of independence. The history of the nautical tattoo stretches back to at least the 1500s. According to the Naval History and Heritage Command, this was exacerbated by the length and boring nature of sea voyages. Sailors sat around with nothing to do, so they took up tattooing each other to pass the time. It was a very amateurish affair. Ink was made from gunpowder and urine. The Brits started the tradition, and it spread to America from there. By the late 1700s, 1/3 and 1/5 of their navies, respectively, had body art. During the American Civil War, sailors got tattoos to commemorate the first battle between ironclad ships. Participants in the Spanish-American War inked "Remember the Maine" on their bodies. Patriotic designs have always been popular, along with military insignia or the names of loved ones. Some sailor tattoos have specific meanings. For example, an anchor means you've crossed the Atlantic, while a pig and a rooster tattooed on each foot is, bizarrely, supposed to save you from drowning in a shipwreck. Tattoos came into fashion in a big way in the 1800s. For a period, rich men and women, even royalty, absolutely had to have body art. It seems tattoos got the royal seal of approval in 1862, when the Prince of Wales, the future Edward VII, visited Jerusalem and got a tattoo to commemorate the trip. In 1882, his sons, the Duke of Clarence and the Duke of York, got tattoos in both Japan and the Holy Land. None of these were tiny things either, but large works of art. Russia's Nicholas II, George V's cousin, got his own dragon tattoo on his right forearm in Japan in 1891. Suddenly, other wealthy people wanted tattoos as well. Aristocrats and wealthy men and women in the UK and America jumped on the body art bandwagon. The stories are a bit hard to believe. One newspaper reported at the end of the 1800s that 3/4 of fashionable women in New York City had ink. There was a widely reported story that Winston Churchill's mom got a snake tattoo, but if she did, there's no photographic evidence. Even today, some royals, such as Lady Amelia Windsor, have ink. As popular as tattoos have been for different types of people at different times in history, there's perhaps never been a period for body art like the one we're living in now. That's because in the late 1950s, we entered what became known as the tattoo renaissance. Tattoo artists really earned the artist part of their name and completely changed the tattoo landscape. It was obvious even at the time that things were changing in a big way, and Time covered the tattoo renaissance back in 1970, saying body art was the, quote, vogue of the counterculture.
Dude, you got a tattoo! So did you, dude? No.
Tattoos are arguably more common and safer than ever before. Parlors are heavily regulated, and many are basically as clean as hospitals. But getting a tattoo can still cause problems, from the slightly annoying to the deadly. CBS News reported on a 2015 study that found 10% of tattoo getting in New York City had short-term complications. 6% of people suffered significant problems, including rashes, itching, or swelling that stuck around for more than 4 months. Some people had these tattoo-related problems for years. It was so bad that the researcher admitted to being surprised by her findings. The best-case scenario when you have a bad tattoo reaction is taking steroids. However, in some cases, it might be better to get the tattoo lasered off. There are occasionally reports about serious scarring or even amputation close calls. According to Paste, in 2017, a Texas man died when he swam in the Gulf of Mexico just 5 days after getting a calf tattoo. The open wound got infected and killed him. When it comes to getting tattoos, aftercare is just as important as where you go to get the ink.